This episode of Guess That Record is sponsored by Marvel Marketing. Marvel Marketing is a full-service digital marketing agency headquartered in Calgary, Alberta, that creates digital impact for your company. To find out more, visit marvelmarketing.ca. Hello and welcome to Guess That Record. I am your host, Jackson Reed. It's our very first episode here at Guess That Record. This is the show where we talk music and try to figure out which album I pulled from my collection. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. I'm very excited about our guest this week. He's the man who since 1989 has helped many musicians, myself included, get a head start in the music industry through his company Foley Entertainment. His clients have earned 38 gold and platinum albums, as well as 4 Grammys. Some of these clients include Bruce Springsteen, Billy Joel, U2, and Bon Jovi. I'm very happy to welcome Eugene Foley to Guess That Record. Gene, how are you?
Oh, Jackson, thanks for having me, and congratulations on your new podcast. And I'm so excited to be on the first episode.
Yeah. Now, when I was writing up that introduction, it dawned on me, what title do you like to refer yourself as? Because, like, when I've told friends and family about the work we've done, I've always referred to you as my manager, but is that what you would call yourself?
Mostly agent. I'm really mostly, for most projects, I consider myself an agent. Some people, if it's more of the consulting end, they'll call me their consultant. I have managed people over the past, not in a long time though, because it's to do it right, it's really a 24/7 job. And now that the way the career is gone and with family and kids and things, I don't have the time to manage anymore to dedicate 24/7 to one account. But usually agent, is that kind of encompasses almost everything that I do for people.
Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know anything about you or Foley Entertainment, maybe you could just give a little rundown of the services you provide for musicians.
Sure, my pleasure. Yeah, so we started, like you said, 1989, and it's a diverse list of things. Everything from artist development, career guidance, publicity and marketing, shopping, just putting deals together. Getting artists with managers and booking agents and record deals and publishing deals. We place, tons and tons of songs every year into movies and TV shows. And then I have a division that I represent a lot of big record producers and engineers and mixers and session musicians, where we've done close to 300 major label albums that our clients have either been the producer, the engineer, the mixer, a hired gun guitarist, hired gun drummer, whatever it may be. So a lot of deal making and just putting good people together and letting them go do their thing, building teams. And then on the other side, marketing and helping get, up and coming all the way up to superstar level artists, get their stuff in front of consumers through press and radio and TV and internet and social media and everything else. So that's kind of, the 1 minute version of what we've been doing for 30 something years now.
Mm-hmm. So where am I talking to you from today?
We are in Richmond, Virginia.
Nice. How's the weather there today?
Not bad. It's not bad that we're still wearing shorts and golf shirts outside. A far cry from New Jersey, where I lived most of my life, where right now I'd already be in a winter jacket probably.
Yeah. We actually had snow in Calgary here over the weekend. So it's coming, but it's sort of melted again. But it's definitely on its way up here. And so you're originally from New Jersey. What made you go to Virginia?
Just, New Jersey's starting to get very expensive to live with property taxes, and we're getting tired of, it's crowded, it's cold. I was really getting tired of the colder winters and stuff. So we kind of just started looking into other areas, and we like the Carolinas, and we just went up settling on Virginia. We like the area. It's not that far. If I need to get back to New Jersey for family things, it's not that far from New York. I could be there in 4.5 hours. So, it was just a good location. We're not going too far, but yet getting into a little more of a rural, quiet area. We're in the suburbs of Richmond out here, and it's nice. You get a lot of value for your dollar getting away from New York and New Jersey. That's for sure, where everything's so expensive.
Yeah. I have to say it's nice to be able to just sit down and talk like this because we've been working together now for like 2 years, and I think we've really had like a casual conversation like this before.
Right. Usually we just got to get on the phone and start making business decisions and career things. And it's nice sometimes just to have a social call. That's nice too.
Yeah. And I guess I want to know what's the first record or the first song you remember hearing that like made you take music seriously?
Um, Probably the Beatles. My parents had a lot of the Beatles 45s, and I remember playing those records, and they had Elvis and Johnny Cash, and I remember listening to those different records and just really enjoying, the songs. And then I went deeper into their collection, and they had a lot of the 50s doo-wop bands and things that they bought back in the day. And I would be listening to like Little Anthony and the Imperials and all the groups from that era, and the beautiful harmony vocals and the amazing songwriting. And I just, between that and the Beatles, what a way to start. Elvis, all those are just great songwriters, great songs, great musicianship. And that really got it. And then when I was in 1977, my older cousin took me with his friends to see Kiss on the Love Gun tour, and you walk in that place, as a grammar school kid, and it's all the fire and blood and smoke and music, and you're like, wow, I want to be a part of this somehow. You walk out of that place, you don't want to be a baseball player anymore. After seeing
Yeah.
Kiss in their heyday,
Yeah.
and then a couple of years after that, going to a Rush concert on the Moving Pictures tour in New York, and seeing that level of musicianship of all three guys. And I just realized at that point I got to get involved with this. As much as I like sports and other things, this is, and so it started out for many years being in bands and things. And then it gets to a certain point where when you realize you're not going to be the next Eddie Van Halen, but how can I still stay in the business? And I realized I had a pretty good knack on the business side, more so than I had as some guitar shredder guy. So I just kind of segued into that side of the desk, and now I help people who really have talent.
Hmm.
So I help them like achieve their dreams. I found my little niche as a part of the team.
Yeah, and you were mentioning that you've played in bands. So like, how long did you spend as a musician?
I did that probably from I had actually a band that was actually pretty serious, even at a young age at 14, and I did that all up till I was 22.
Okay,
Yeah, and
nice.
the last band I had, we actually had an indie deal with a real legitimate label with distribution. They put us on tour. We did tour support. We had some endorsement deals with musical equipment companies, and had a nice little run. Got some good press. Got some radio. Then, like anything, runs its course, and everyone realized it was time to move on, with their lives. So I headed off to law school. The singer went off to I think it was like a chiropractic school for medicine, and everyone just moved on with their lives. And but it was a good run though, and it really helps me though. I think with my clients, because I've been on their end of the fence. I wrote songs. I dealt with clubs. I did touring in a crappy van with no money and no heat and no air conditioning, and all the things that I see them going through. I lived it on my own, and I think I could really empathize with their struggles and do what I can to help them avoid as many struggles as possible through you live, you learn, and you try to help people so they don't have to make some of those mistakes. Because in my day there wasn't a lot of books, there wasn't the internet. You just had to go out and do stuff, and some things worked and some things didn't, and that was it. Nowadays there's so many resources to help artists, between books and videos and the internet and hiring professionals, and there's so many options that you shouldn't have like a lot of those spinal tap moments anymore
Hmm.
if you do your homework. So I just try to help people with that. So any work you're doing, any money you're spending, it's the most efficient route. So you're just not doing a bunch of stuff just to fail.
What was your band called?
It was called Strike Two,
Nice.
was one of them, and then before that we had a band called Cypress, like the tree Cypress, and it was named after the street that the band came about on, rehearsed on. So it was
Yeah.
we were trying to name, and everyone was standing out on the porch one night, and there was the street sign right there, and we're like, there it is, no more arguing. It's Cypress, done. And
Yeah. So yeah, then you sort of switched sides and got into like the business side of the industry. And what was so the moment for you was just to have a more stable career but stay involved with music?
right, exactly. It got to the point where I realized that I took the music end as far as it was going to take. I had to have that honest talk with myself. So I did, and then I realized that, well, I still have good skills here. I was always doing all the marketing and booking and everything else for my band, and then when I went into law school, I realized, wow, there's actually electives that I could take that cover contracts and entertainment law and intellectual property, and I'm going to do this, and it kind of just came together where I just merged the academic background with my music passion and life experiences, and the rest was history. And I've just been ever since then, just helping other people, reach their goals. It's
Hmm.
fun. It's really enjoyable to be a part of success. And when you hear a song or a demo that starts out, as a little demo that they send me, and a year later it's on the radio, or it's up for a Grammy nomination, or it's getting accolades. It's just great to see that ride with people, to see that you believe in someone, you work hard with them, and you watch them climb that ladder to every milestone until the ultimate, if it's awards, if it's a record deal, whatever their ultimate goal is, when they get there, and you look at the person and say, wow, it took 2 years of getting our butts kicked, but look, it worked.
Hmm.
And it's a great feeling. And even after all these years, that excitement has never gone away. It's like I remember dialing people's phone number to tell them good news about their career, and like my hands are almost shaking because I'm so excited. I'm dialing, and even after all these years, you're so excited to say, wow, this phone call is something that both of us are going to remember for the rest of their lives. Hey, the label said yes, you got a record deal. Hey, that tour you wanted, they said yes, you're going to open up for your favorite band of all time for the next 23 nights. Any whatever it is on a call, knowing that that's something we're always going to remember, both me and the artist. It's just, yeah, really, really great. And also being just a huge music fan. That's why I think the theme of your show uh, is just so cool, because there's a lot of people out there who just love music. It's beyond just doing it for themselves. We're all fans. That's usually what got us all here in the first place. We love a certain artist or a band or whatever, and somehow the other it evolved into being more than just a fan, being the
Hmm.
artist or working in the industry or both. So I'm excited. I think what you're doing is great, and I'm just really glad to be a part of it. It's the first one.
I remember sort of going back to how you got started. I remember like in our first phone call when we started working together, you mentioned that Bon Jovi sort of helped you get your start with Foley Entertainment. So how did that come together?
Yeah, I went to certain bands in the area that were like up and coming. Like there were our local Jersey bands where they had deals, and I went to different bands like Bon Jovi and Queensryche and a couple of the other hair bands from that era. And I said, listen, I'll volunteer different services for the band, for their fan club, whatever it is that they needed help with, and I'll do some PR, marketing, giving out flyers, whatever I had to for free, just to get some experience and build a resume. And that kind of got my foot in the door. And then when up and coming bands would hear that, oh, you help this band, you help that band, it just kind of opened up doors, and the rest was history.
You've told me some awesome stories about getting to meet really cool people in the industry. And probably my favorite one was when you told me how you met Bruce Springsteen at a Starbucks. And I like that one because I'm a huge Springsteen fan. He's been such a huge inspiration for me. So what happened with that one?
He actually met Bruce 3 times before we ever did any kind of business stuff. I met him at a PetSmart pet supply store. Had a nice conversation. Just we were both in there shopping, and there's Bruce Springsteen back when we lived at the Jersey Shore for many years. So I'm at a Starbucks, same thing, conversation. But probably the coolest one was I was at a Bob Dylan concert backstage, watching the show from the side of the stage, and just standing there. The lights were down, obviously, in the back, and I'm watching this concert. And a guy comes up and is standing next to me. Uh, I didn't really look sideways. I was, and we, he's watching the show. And after a couple songs, like, man, great show, great show. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And a little small talk. Again, not really looking. Then I'm like, God, this voice, I know this voice. I turn around and there's Bruce Springsteen, and
Mhm.
and it's like, wow, we meet again, and we had a little running joke how I keep bumping into him at all these places around Monmouth County, um, and then as the years went on, being involved with helping him, like we've had clients now that have played on his albums, who've been guest musicians on tour, guest musicians in the studio, remixing songs, guitar techs, stuff when he did some of that blues, the blues stuff with the Bon Jovi guys, handling the PR and the radio. And so our paths have crossed many times, since then. But talk about a strange thing, like you're watching a show and all of a sudden you look and you do that double take, you know, like, whoa.
Mhm.
And obviously he was there to watch the Dylan show as well. Obviously they sent him backstage so he could watch it without being, mobbed by fans. And there he was. So we watched the a Bob Dylan concert, standing there and making some chatting here and there. So yeah, cool story. And that was a long time ago. That was in the late '90s, I believe.
I liked when you were telling me how you had like a business deal with him and you talked it over at Starbucks. And I like that because you'd think like when you meet a big star like Bruce, it would be in like a boardroom or a fancy restaurant, but he's just like, let's meet at Starbucks.
And there was some big shots on the call through like speaker phones at the table. There was little
Uh,
phones on the table and speakers. So yeah, you just get the job done. And I think artists like that, there's certain artists in this world that they're so smart in business and they're so involved in their own careers. That's why they've had 30 and 40-year careers. Guys like Bon Jovi and Bruce Springsteen and so many others that have done that. They they're just very involved in their career, not only the creative end but the business end, and they're really smart and they're really hard workers, and they've never lost that hunger. 30,
mhm,
40 years into a career, they're still a part of the decision making process on everything of their career. So I think that's a lesson learned for up and coming artists that because you make a few dollars, just don't start trusting everyone to do everything. You
for
have
sure.
to stay involved to make sure that things are going the way you want them to go. It's your vision. You're the artist.
Now, have you ever been starstruck meeting someone?
Probably the only time was when Ahmet Erdogan, the founder of Atlantic Records, passed away. Unfortunately, I got, unfortunately he passed away, but I got invited to his memorial service. And that night was amazing. The people that I got to meet and chat with that night, because tons of famous artists that were either on Atlantic at the time or at some point in their career, they all came to this event to pay their respects to Mr. Erdogan. Some performed, some just hung out, and that night was amazing. Bumping into the three surviving members of Led Zeppelin and having a conversation with them, and Mick Jagger, and some of the guys from the hair bands, like the different, like Dee Snider, Twisted Sister, and different people. Like, it was amazing. The people, Bette Midler, Stevie Nicks, all these amazing people that just everyone just mingling around and gabbing and chatting. And I remember driving home that night, and I'd met a lot of people over the years between the Grammy Awards events and record company events and all the major label artists we've done stuff for. But that night, I remember driving home thinking, wow, I was just gabbing and shaking hands with Mick Jagger and the three guys of Led Zeppelin. That one really was one of those nights, like, wow, like that was awesome. They were super nice, all of them. And I remember telling Mick he had this really, really nice suit on with sneakers, and it looked so cool. And I remember telling him, I said, Mr. Jagger, he's like, call me Mick. I was like, I said, I could never pull that off. I could never look cool wearing sneakers with a suit. I said, but you just do it. You just are so cool. He's like, oh, try it, man. Try it. You'll be fine. Like, he was totally cool. And we had a laugh. And yeah, that was a great moment.
I have to say that, like, I wish I met you earlier in my career, because like you've probably been the biggest reason for me wanting to keep pursuing music and try and make something out of this. The industry is filled with pretty scummy people, and I was involved with this management company in Canada who like promoted, with big quotation marks, my music, and that company was it was nothing but scummy people, and I was with them for a long time because I felt like, man, I don't know anyone else, and it really felt like I was crashing into a dead end when I met you. And it was such a huge moment to hear back from you because, like, I'm not really used to getting responses back from people in the industry. Like, music is an industry of rejection a lot of the time. And it was like crazy to have someone who, has your connections say like, oh, I love your song. Let's work together. And that's what's been awesome is you're very positive, very transparent. You have the ability to do great things for people, and you work with the Springsteens and the U2s of the world, but you'll also work with people like me who are trying to make a name for themselves. And it's a very long build up, but I want to know, like, what advice can you give people who were in my situation, where I was feeling a bit hopeless about my career?
Right. Well, first, thank you for those kind words. I appreciate it. I mean, from the first time we talked, I just had a great feeling. You're very, very smart, very, very, hungry to learn. You wanted to learn. You wanted to be coached. You had the talent. You had the work ethic. And like you said, you were just in a dead end that you need to get out of. And I'm glad that I was able to kind of steer you out of that. And if you think how far you've come, both in accomplishments and the development of your songs, and now you have a new song with the legendary Kenny Aronoff, who I introduced you to, is now playing drums on your new single. And I'm so proud of you, just watching how far you've come just in our 2 years together. And again, that's why I enjoy doing it. I like to have that balance of doing the big name artists and then also helping the next generation. I love to balance my time like that. I think some of the bigger things people who are listening to this are up and coming musicians, and it sounds obvious, but it's obviously not happening enough. So it has to be repeated. Is having great songs. Too many people rush through the songwriting process to say, "Oh, I have 200 songs. I have 300 songs." Well, that's fine. I'd rather you have 10 that are great than 300 that are not. It's about great songwriting, and whatever your style is, in any style of music, you need to go to the charts, see other artists that are in your style of music who are on the Billboard charts and the Spotify charts and iTunes charts, and get an idea what's happening right now. What's the song arrangements? What's the sound? What's the direction of what they're doing? Just to have some guidance to take your material and at least steer it in the right direction. Because if you try to be too much of a maverick, too much of a renegade, you're just not going to get anywhere. Because at this point, like it or not, press people, radio, music industry executives, they need to have a label for projects. They have to know, well, do we send this to jazz radio? Do we send this to blues? Do we send it to rap? Whatever it is. When people try to be all over the place, it just, people listen to it and say, wow, that's really good. That's really artsy. Next, because they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what box to put it in. And if you just want to be an artist and do it for self enjoyment, then that's all. You could do a 10-minute cover song of a nursery rhyme. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But if you want to really make a living, you need to sound like the songs on the radio in your style of music. Otherwise, you're just really just spinning your wheels and wasting your time, and it will never be more than a bar band. Um, so you take somebody like you, who you get that. So you do your homework, you do your research, you line yourselves with the right people, and your songwriting has gone up so high in your production just since we've met. That's what people should aspire to, is like getting songs, that's the main thing. Then once you have that, getting the other materials professional. Make sure you have a nice video. Make sure all your social media pages and your website look professional and are properly run, so it doesn't look like a 9-year-old doing it. Have positive engagement with fans on social media. Work on a live show. You have to be able to play great, because if people are impressed with your music and your live show is weak, that's where your journey will end. You can't have that type of weakness. You got to make sure you can perform, and that's the thing now with more and more clubs going out of business. There's far and far less places for artists to play. So we're going to be seeing, unfortunately, a whole generation coming soon of kids who are maybe teens now. Well, when they're 18 to 25 in a few years, how much live experience will they have to become great performers? Because there's just not the outlets for them that people of older generations have had that luxury of. So that concerns me. You see certain great performers, like say a Prince or Bruce Springsteen or some of the other names that are known for their live show. They had the ability when they were young to cultivate that over many years, playing clubs and colleges and corporate events and private parties. And I don't know how much of that is left for the 15-year-old right now by the time they're 18 or 20 or 21. So we'll see. Maybe there'll be other ways, but for now, great songs, great marketing materials, and a great live show. If you can get all three of those, you're headed in the right direction.
Thank you for the nice words about my music. It means a lot, and yeah, it's really special getting to work with you, because we can, like we got Kenny Aronoff to play on my song, and it's like, how would I get the chance to do that like any other time? So it's yeah, it's really a special relationship, and I hope we can take it further. Before we move into like the main part of the podcast here, I'd figured I'd end it with a segment here that I developed some questions here, and I'm calling this the record personality test. They're just kind of like the first thing that comes to your head here is what you can answer. So what album have you been listening to the most lately?
Lately, probably the original Boston album. For some reason, I've been on this Boston kick lately, and the original one with More Than a Feeling and all those songs. I've been playing that a lot. That's been my latest kick.
Yeah, that's you can't go wrong with that one. What's an album that when you listen to it, you need to wear headphones and get lost in the music?
Probably Van Halen 1.
What's an album that, in your opinion, is all killer, no filler?
Probably the Gin Blossoms album, the one that really broke them, that came out in like the early 90s. I can't think of the title of the album, but it had Allison Road and all those big hits. Hey, Jealousy. That album is from start to finish. Every single song on that album's a hit. The other one would be Alanis Morissette's big album that came out in the mid to late '90s. That one, same thing. Well, that had 7, 8, 9 singles, whatever it was. That album is another one. Every single song is great on that album.
So you're on a cross-country road trip. What's an album you need to take with you?
Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet would be one. And pretty much anything by Led Zeppelin or Rush. Name it.
Yeah.
Moving Pictures by Rush, I guess, if I had to pick one.
What's a good album to play when you're on a first date?
First date? Anything by Prince. He always brings a little romantic, sexy vibe to a meeting.
And lastly here, what's an album you've played so much that you can't listen to it anymore?
Probably Kiss Love Gun.
Yeah. There we go. That's the record personality test. I wanted to do something that was sort of inside the actor's studio, how he asks the same questions at the end of each interview. That was sort of what I was going for with that. Yeah. All right, Gene. So it's time we enter the guessing portion of this podcast. So before we begin, I'll go over the rules for both you and the audience. So I have a bag here for those that are listening, and inside this bag is the record that I have pulled from my collection of nearly 400 albums. So I'll be giving you 3 clues about this album, and so to try and help you get in the right direction. Then you get to ask me up to 15 yes or no questions to try and figure out which album I picked. As a helpful tip, probably better to save the questions asking if it's a specific album until the end, once you've sort of gathered enough clues. You're more than welcome to say, is it Rumors by Fleetwood Mac right out of the gate? But if all your questions are like that, you might run out. So, all right. Gene, are you ready to guess that record?
Yes, I'm ready to guess that record. Let's play ball.
All right. Here are your 3 clues. The first one, this record came out in the 1980s. It reached the top 10 of the Billboard 200 and went platinum. The third clue, the artists behind this record made a major change to their sound prior to recording this album. All right, so question 1.
Is the artist is it an American artist?
No. Question 2.
All right, is it someone from England?
No.
Ooh, interesting.
Question 3.
Let me guess, Canada?
Yes.
Okay, so we know it's a Canadian artist, and it was in the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the other clues again?
So it came out in the 80s, reached the top 10, and went platinum. And the artists made a major change to their sound prior to the recording of the album. Question 4.
Was the singer the focal point of the group?
No, I'd say it was they're an equal collaboration. Question 5.
I think I have a name in mind, but I just lost it. Could it be Loverboy?
It's not Loverboy. Question 6.
Could it be the Matthew Good Band?
It's not that.
Gosh, I can't think of anyone from Canada. I don't know what else. What else can we do?
Well, I'll tell you that we have mentioned this band already.
Okay, that's a good clue.
Question 7.
I mean, could it have been Rush?
It is Rush.
Oh, okay.
So now, which record from Rush? Question 8.
Could it be Grace Under Pressure?
Gene, congratulations. It was Grace Under Pressure.
Okay, there we go. That was a bid.
One of my favorite Rush albums, and I've always enjoyed it, but I feel like in the last year or so, it's sort of become it's really climbing the list of my favorite Rush albums. And before we get more into the discussion about the album, I'll just have a few quick facts here for the listeners, courtesy of Wikipedia, just in case you're unfamiliar with the work. But Grace Under Pressure was released in 1984. The album is notable in the Rush catalog for not being produced by Terry Brown, which ended a collaboration between the band and the producer that went all the way back to Fly By Night in 1975.
What they
Which
used, I think Peter Henderson, I believe, did this album. Is that right?
Yeah, and that was the third clue there. That was the major change that they made.
I should. That would have definitely. I would have gotten it quicker because that's the only album I'm aware of that I know that he's done. I'm sure he's done many others, but that's the only one I know.
Yeah. So yes, Peter Henderson produced, and it continued a move that the band made with Signals in 1982, which placed more of an emphasis on keyboards and synthesizers. The album reached number 4 in Canada, number 10 in the US, and it went platinum in both countries. And it was also the last album Rush recorded at Les Studio in Morin Heights, Quebec, until 1989's Presto. And Les Studio had been their main recording space for quite a few years. They had recorded every album from Permanent Waves to Grace Under Pressure at that studio. And Alex Lifeson said in a 1984 interview that he thought that Grace Under Pressure was the most satisfying of all our records. So, yeah, do you have any memories of this album coming out?
Well, I always liked that song Red Sector A. I always enjoyed that one. And in my original hometown of Bayonne, New Jersey, there was a local band that all the band members really were huge Rush fans. They're really talented guys. And they actually named their band Red Sector A. And they had a couple albums out and stuff. And as soon as I heard the band name, I'm like, I bet, before I even read their bio, I'm like, I bet I know who they like.
Yeah.
And they did a great job. They were fantastic musicians and definitely tipped their hat nicely to Rush. That was great. And even like Red Lenses, that's always a song I think that's underrated. That's a great song that I think should have been, bigger than it was just amongst the Rush fans, and of course Distant Early Warning, that was the big hit of the album.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big one.
So there's quite a divide in the Rush community between people who like the 80s era and then those who despise it and like their sort of more guitar-driven work. Personally, I love both. I love that Rush has such a diverse catalog where you can have like the 70s hard rock and then sort of the more new wavy stuff from the 80s. Which era of Rush do you prefer?
I agree. As a fan, I do like them all. There was never any of their albums that I was turned off by. If I had to pick one or the other, I like the stuff that was more guitar driven, even like, Fly By Night and Working Man and some of those songs, But even when they went on this little experimental stuff with the extra keyboards and things, I went right along with it. I was still enjoying it. And to me, I understood as an artist, those guys were so talented. They had to reach and expand their reach further. So it was still rock at the end of the day. The Signals album, that came out, I was still in high school when that came out, and another great album. I mean, that's one that we could almost say from when we did the Q&A earlier, that's one where every single song on that record is great.
And this album that I just pulled out of the bag is technically the first Rush album that was in my collection, which I got from my dad, because my dad, he kept all of his records and just sort of passed them on to me. And that was sort of how that was my starter pack, I guess. But he didn't even know he had that album, which is sort of funny. I guess a friend or something must have lent it to him, being like, oh, hey, this is a really good album. And then he didn't really take to any of the songs, and it just ended up in the pile. And so it's that specific copy I have is in very good shape. So yeah, if we go through like track by track here, it starts off with Distant Early Warning, which is one of the more well-known songs from the album, and it really sets the tone thematically. It's one of Rush's darker albums. Then we have After Image, which I personally was that was the one song that I went to right after Neil Peart died, because that's what the song is all about, is like remembering someone you knew who passed on. It sort of was like very timely, I guess, when Neil passed away last year. Red Sector A is interesting because when they played it live, Geddy actually didn't play bass. He just played keyboards on it. So if you watch footage of them playing that song live, it's just keyboards, and then I think there's like a bass track or something going throughout the song. Um, and it's also an interesting song in its lyrical content because it's actually about the Holocaust. Geddy Lee's parents were Holocaust survivors.
Right, that's right. I remember seeing that in an interview with him that he did with CBS.
Mm-hmm.
And, he talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you have The Enemy Within. That song I find interesting because it's really shows how Rush had a huge influence from the Police in the early 80s there. I feel like that's a song that the Police could have done, and it's really interesting. I don't think there was a band that had a bigger influence on Rush at that time period than the Police. Then The Body Electric, which is quite a cool song. I always liked the sound of it, and it has a story about a robot that gains consciousness or something. So that one's cool. Then we have Kid Gloves, and I think this is one of Rush's most underrated songs of all time. And it was one I never really paid attention to until this last year, which is kind of weird. Like sometimes I'll listen to an album and I'll like some songs I won't even pick up on until much later. And I'm like, how did I miss this song? This is great. And that was Kid Gloves. And it's when I look at what it's about, it's like it's like handling situations delicately when things are going crazy. I think is what the song's about, and it really takes me back to my high school days when I was really getting into Rush. I didn't really, especially towards the end of like grade 12. I was usually like on my own. I didn't really have a lot of friends left. But it was music that was like, what kept me sane. So like listening to Rush and The Who and Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix, and that was sort of what just kept me going. And it's really even though I wasn't really listening to Kid Gloves at the time, it takes me back because it reminds me of songs like Subdivisions and Middletown Dreams and I always think about the video of Subdivisions where the kid, that nerdy kid in the high school. That's kind of what I was like at that time. I was just like, all on my own in a high school that looked exactly like the one in that video. So yeah, and the other thing about Kid Gloves that I really like is I think it's one of Alex Lifeson's most underrated guitar pieces in the whole Rush catalog. I learned how to play it, and the solo is so fun to play, and you'd never. It's one that never really gets talked about that much. So, yeah, I like that one. Then as you mentioned, Red Lenses,
which was interesting about Red Lenses, that was in C sharp minor, which was not a key or whatever that they used too much of. So that was interesting. I don't know why they did that, but and then the other thing with that song, I remember with the lyrics, and you could look that up later. You actually have the record there, which I had back in the day. I don't even know where mine is, but I have it on CD now. But the liner notes, the lyrics for that particular song are all in lowercase letters for some reason. I don't know the story behind that. I guess you could research that. But for some reason, that song, there's no capital letters in Red Lens's lyrics.
It has, I always sort of thought it had a bit of a like a jazzy feel to it compared to the rest of the album. But then the final track is Between the Wheels, and I always liked Between the Wheels. And the cool thing is that when I saw Rush, the only Rush concert I've been to, which was on their final tour at the Saddle Dome in Calgary, they played that song, and I thought that was really cool because it's like it's a bit of a deep cut for Rush, and so it was really cool to hear it live at my only Rush concert. And I have to say, sort of an overall view of Grace Under Pressure, when I look at their 80s albums, I think that this record was sort of the perfect balance between the keyboards and the guitar. The guitar isn't really buried in the mix like it is on Signals or Power Windows, and on quite a few songs, especially like Kid Gloves, it's totally the driving force of the song. So I think the mix has a really good balance, and it's sort of one of the only '80s albums where they, I think, had a good balance between all the different parts that they had going on.
Right. And even the artwork on the front cover, it almost looks like a beautiful painting. It's really, really great artwork.
Hmm. Another reason why I've sort of been getting more into the '80s Rush camp, is that they started to take things more seriously. I think in the '80s, like I love everything they did in the '70s. Even when they're singing about talking trees and aliens and snow dogs and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But starting with Permanent Waves, I feel like the band started to talk more about like real world problems and scenarios. Yeah, it just has a bit more emotion to it, and uh, Grace Under Pressure is probably their darkest album in terms of the lyrical contents, but I think that's what gives it its impact.
Right. Right. Matter of fact, even though they didn't use Terry Brown on that album, in the liner notes, they give him a little shout out
Hmm.
in French, of all things.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they wrote it in French, and it says something like "You'll always be our good friend" or something of that nature. And a lot of people didn't know like what that was about, but it was just a little respectful nod. They decided to go with someone else, but Terry they still viewed as a friend.
And for anyone that's interested, I know on YouTube, I once just sort of came across this video, but there is a bootleg recording in 1983, so about a year before the album came out. They did a run of shows at Radio City in New York, and at that show, they were basically using it to sort of test out the new songs and work on the arrangements before they went to record them. And they're playing songs like Kid Gloves and all these songs that ended up on Grace Under Pressure, but they're different arrangements. So if you're interested to sort of see how the album came to be, you can go look that up on YouTube.
Very cool. That's very interesting. There's even some things online where they'll have like isolated tracks. You can
Hmm.
hear from a Rush song, just the drums or just the bass, just the guitar. And those are even fascinating if you're really a hardcore fan. Just hearing the drums of Tom Sawyer or something, like all the stuff going on, that when all the other instruments are out of the mix, you're hearing just that, just to hear how intricate those drum parts are.
Oh yeah, no. I definitely, once I got into Rush and started playing their songs on guitar, that was a big jump in my skill level. So, and I still go back and play. One that I always try to go back to every now and then is like La Villa Strangiato, because yeah, it's a workout on it's a workout on any instrument. If you want to get good playing your instrument, just play Rush.
Exactly, that's true. Those guys could play, and just had a huge influence on me as a musician and as a business person and wanting to be involved with the career. You just want to. It's a shame I never got to work with them in any capacity. That really would have been a real dream come true type moment. But you never know. Hopefully, maybe Getty and Alex will still do some music under, even if it's under solo names or something.
Well, I know Alex he's been putting out songs that he's been doing. And yeah, I mean they'll always have like, special edition records to put out and promote. So, yeah. Well, we've reached the end of Guess That Record. So, thanks again to Eugene Foley for coming on to this first episode. One of the reasons I started this podcast is because I don't have enough conversations about music in my day-to-day life. And so, I that's one thing I want to change with this podcast, is just to be able to talk music with cool people who have cool things to say. So I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. And I love the idea of your show. I think people, both industry people you'll have as guests, as well as the listeners, will really enjoy this. I know I enjoyed this very much. It definitely makes you think, about albums, and some of the albums we talked about today, I might not have thought about that in a long time. So just it gets me thinking and of great music. And listen, that's why we're all here. We love great songs. We love our favorite artists, and yeah, definitely enjoyed this opportunity. So thank you, and I look forward to hearing other episodes as they start posting.
Yeah, and so I think you figured out what record it was in, I think, 8 questions. So that's the record now.
Because I'm, all these big music credentials. If I didn't get it, that would have looked bad. So I'm glad I got.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for coming on. Thank you to the listeners. We're just getting started with this podcast, so make sure you follow us on Instagram, which is @GuessThatRecord. So give us a like and a follow wherever you listen to podcasts. Remember to keep rocking, and we'll see you next time.